Hello, my lovely circle of musicians, sound healing practitioners, maybe even engineers. Welcome. I'm here today to discuss with you my latest purchase, which is a USB condenser microphone. So, why USB? Well, we all know how functional USB microphones can actually be. You just plug it and play. Why a condenser one? Well, it always has this warmer tone to it that everybody seems to love, everybody seems to like. So yeah, that would be it. So there we are. That's the Mackie EM 91CU, and that is a condenser USB microphone. So just in case you're new to the field of, sound engineering, technology, music technology, whatever you might want to call it, basically, condenser microphones are considered to be more sensitive microphones as opposed to, of course, dynamic microphones. So let's check out what comes in the box with the microphone. So there is some software and plugins included. Keep this card. So you get Pro Tools, so a version of Pro Tools obviously, and you're also getting the code to activate it, and you're getting waveform. Is waveform something like Wavelab? I have no idea. So you get a silicone bag, and that's a nice thing. You get a manual. You usually don't get paper manuals anymore, so that's quite refreshing. Thank you very much, Mackie. You get the microphone, which feels quite sturdy, and you get this one. So what is this? This is a shock mount for your microphone, and that basically means that it eliminates any impact, so do you see how it wobbles? Oh, yeah, because these are elastic bands basically. So this is a cage within a cage, and it's tied with these elastic bands, so that basically if there is an impact, if somebody stumps on the floor or something, this will move like so, and it would absorb the impact so that the impact will not pass on to the microphone. And then of course you get the USB cable. All right, so if you want to use it with a mobile phone, so be it an Android or an iPhone, it doesn't really matter. All you have to do is get an adapter that would go from the standard USB one to USB probably C. And the nice thing about this box is that they didn't spare any money, and they put in the foam thing, the nice stuff. They didn't just put in cardboard or anything. And how can you use this foam? Well, this piece of foam, if you're a sound therapist, sound healing practitioner, you could use this block, and you can rest your instruments upon it, and so it will absorb any vibrations and so on. So and also it doesn't make any sound when you put things on the foam, as opposed to putting things on the table. So if you're a sound engineer, same thing, you can use it for that purpose, to dampen the sound of instruments as they are being put down. Of course you can edit stuff out, but it's always better not to have to edit a lot of stuff out. Now, the thing I've read time and time again on the internet about this thing is that the threading of it is quite large, and that it therefore cannot fit for some reason on standard microphone stands, and therefore you need to get an adapter. So I really got this is a Bayer Dynamics microphone, so I always keep my microphones with a microphone clip, because once you lose a clip, I know there are these universal clips and stuff, but once you lose the clip, it can be quite difficult to get it back. So the problem, I'm going to show you what the problem is. So if you see these threads, I'm trying to focus, it doesn't focus, it needs to be here to focus, whatever. Well, this one, the Bayer Dynamic one, which was again a very cheap microphone, not as well cheaper than the Mackie one, but it was, you know, an entry-level microphone, just as this Mackie one is. So the smart thing that these people did in Beyerdynamic is that they included both types of threads. So you get the wide thread here, and then you get the narrow thread in the middle. Okay, so it doesn't really matter what your microphone stand is like, because this one can fit all microphone stands, and that is great. Whereas this one, it only has really wide threads, so it is supposed to not fit many microphone stands. And I'm going to go get my microphone stand right now, because it's a Pro that I've got, and it's a very standard one, you know, the one with a boom. So I'm really curious to see whether this one is alright the way it is. Now, once you get this microphone, if you're a podcaster, you're not done. You really do need a base. So you either have a microphone stand already. It could be a floor stand, it could be a tabletop stand, it could be one of those clamp-on things, yeah, you know, for podcasters and for radio producers. But you definitely do need a base, okay? Because this doesn't have a base, and any microphone really, but especially condenser microphones, you cannot hold them in your hand. And by the way, that's the microphone, forgot to show you. It only has this port. It's a USB port. There are no buttons. There is nothing else. It's a cardioid microphone, and you can see it here. See that little heart symbol? That means that it is a cardioid microphone. So cardioid microphones, what it actually means is that this is the polar pattern. So when you buy a microphone, there are two very important things for you to check out. The first one is the polar pattern, and the second one to check out is the frequency response. And let's see in a lovely little manual if we've got any of that. So polar pattern, actually, what it means, yes, let me show you the diagrams. So when you're buying real microphones, so not the cheap Amazon microphones for £20 or whatever. So when you're buying real microphones, you usually get a sheet of paper like this, like so, and it shows you what the polar pattern is. It looks like this here. It's a cardioid microphone, and then you get the frequency response chart graph. Okay. So it says here that it is super directional. So a cardioid microphone, basically, this is a cardioid as well, my Beyerdynamic one. It actually means that it catches sound like so, all right? Whereas an omnidirectional microphone would catch sound here and here and here and here and here, and omni, so whichever direction the sound might be coming from. Then a very popular polar pattern for podcasters and radio producers would be the figure of 8 one, and the figure of 8, it's like the figure of 8. So if you imagine number 8, yeah, you get these bumps, okay? So it would be a microphone. Usually they're flat like this, you know. You see, it's got a flat side, it's got a flat side. And in a figure of 8 microphone, you would get signal from this side and you would get signal from that side. And this is very useful if you're running a podcast, because basically I can talk from this side and you can talk from this side. Well, before the coronavirus hit us, obviously, and then the microphone catches us equally, okay? Because it catches sound from this side, it captures sound from this side, and it also captures sound from this side as well. So this is not a figure of 8 microphone. It's not an omni microphone. It is a unidirectional, which means it only points towards one direction, or else a cardioid, which means, you know, you just hold it. Well, you don't hold it literally, but you have it in front of you like so, and you speak to it from this side, and it will capture your voice. So that's with the polar pattern. Now, polar patterns are very, very important because they are different according to the type of work you need to do, okay? For the most part, if you're a singer and you just need to capture your voice, so voice coming from one direction, you just need a cardioid microphone, just like the two, the dynamic one and the condenser one here, okay? And there are ribbon microphones as well, the old ones, the Elvis kind of microphone, you know, and they got this very warm sound and so on, but they're very, very, they're harder to come across and they're very, very expensive. So stick to the condenser one if you want clarity, but usually you don't need and you don't get to use a condenser microphone in a live situation, all right? So if you're a singer, get a microphone, a cheap dynamic microphone like this one for your live performances, and then get this one for studio production, for podcasting, for recordings, for more high quality recording sounds. Yeah, so that's with a polar pattern. So for example, if I was to record a choir, so if you're a choir master, if you do have a choir, you actually cannot really work with a cardioid microphone because you need an omnidirectional. And what they would usually do is that they would hang the microphone in the middle of the circle, then the singers would stand in a circle or in a horseshoe, whatever, and then the microphone catches sound from all directions, okay? So the polar pattern really dictates how your microphone is going to be capturing the sound, from which direction the sound will be absorbed, listened to, processed, and passed on as an electric signal, okay? Because this is what microphones do basically. They listen for the sound, okay? And they're transforming these acoustic signals into electricity. And then this electricity gets passed on, electric signals rather than electricity, and this gets passed on through the wires, okay? Now, the second thing you would be interested in would be the frequency response chart, okay? So the frequency response chart has to do with which type of instrument, and voice is always an instrument in terms of sound engineering and music technology. So which type of instrument this microphone is good for. So for example, if you're a drummer and you have many instruments, let's say 8 instruments more or less, you would more or less need 8 microphones. Well, you could make do with 5, but each microphone would have different stats, different statistics, because each of your 8 instruments, each of your 8 drums and cymbals basically has different characteristics when it comes to sound. So every single person and every single instrument has a different frequency that it can perform, okay? When it comes to a drum, these are instruments that for the most part, they have a very narrow spectrum of frequencies that they produce. Whereas, for example, if you were talking about a piano or a church organ, for example, you get a huge array of frequencies that these instruments can produce. Same goes with voices. There are some voices that are literally incredible, okay? So there are some voices recorded in the Guinness book of records and stuff, and they can reach actually inaudible levels of frequencies. So you can't hear it, but the guy is producing the frequency, the guy is producing the sound, and we can capture it with electronic devices and measure it, okay? So when it comes to these sort of instruments, the instruments that have a very wide variety of frequencies that they can produce, you need a microphone that has a better frequency response or a wider frequency response. Now, the thing is, microphones usually color voices, or they color the voice of the instrument or the voice of the person, okay? And this is done by listening better or worse to different frequencies, okay? And this is what this graph shows you. For example, it says to you that here's the hertz, so it's pretty much going from 20 hertz to 20,000 hertz. And why does it go from 20 to 20,000? Pretty much because this is the range of human hearing, okay? Most people cannot actually hear below 20 hertz. Well, you're lucky if you can hear 20 hertz, because we used to think that as you grow older, you lose the higher end of frequencies. So normally you should be able to hear up to 20,000 hertz of sounds. But now they're starting to realize that maybe actually it's the lower frequencies that are the ones to go first, okay? So if you see here, at 20 hertz, it's like so. Then at 100 hertz, it's like so. It's pretty much flat. But when it comes to the high range of frequencies up here, it's losing its capability to listen. And this is the coloring of the microphone. So you know that you're going to have a drop at around 20K, 20,000 hertz. Now, if you have a mixer, if you have an equalizer, and if you know your microphone is doing this, you can remedy this. But most people actually don't. Or, I mean, you can easily have a mixer in your computer and stuff, but I don't know how many people can actually use it to that standard. So it's really nice to know what the microphone does to your voice and what the frequency response is. Okay, so you might like this dip over there, and actually I don't really think it affects human voices, because human voices would not go that high up. And of course there are always the harmonics and the argument about the harmonics, that you do get the harmonics and everything, but meh. So it tells you everything. It talks about the polar pattern, the frequency response, the sensitivity in decibels, in dB, and other measurements. Okay, so it's quite interesting. It even gives you some information and some guidelines about how to connect it to your Windows or Mac computer and get it to work. So that's nice of them. And yeah, it has some instructions, it has the guarantees, and then it has different languages. So that's it. That's the manual. It's really nice of them to include this, so you know what you're up against. Now, next video, actually I need to get my microphone stand and check out what the fuss is about this this anti-shock kind of shock mount thingy. It's a little bit sticky now, isn't it? So it has some padding on the inside and it's a bit sticky. And where's the microphone? Let's check it out. Let's check it out. Because it's like it does slide in. Okay, it does slide in. The shock mount, yeah, it looks nice, doesn't it? Yeah. So imagine singing or talking in front of this. It feels nice. Then again, of course, because it's a condenser microphone, you would need a pop filter. So a pop filter, it's those screen mesh kind of circles that you often see in front of the microphone, especially when singers are singing like this in close proximity to the microphone. So there's an effect called the proximity effect, okay? And this is the popping sound that you get when singers or speakers use certain consonants. So specifically with P as in Papa and B as in Bravo, you would get this effect. Okay, so you would get the plosive sounds basically. You would get a pop in the recording. Because we don't like this pop, then we get the pop filter. So what happens basically, it has to do with the anatomy of your mouth and the articulation. So when you're pronouncing Papa and Bravo, basically your lips are sealed and then they open abruptly and a lot of air escapes. So this air that escapes, it hits the capsule of the microphone, and it shouldn't be doing this. It hits the microphone of the capsule very abruptly and then it moves like this, okay? And this creates this effect which is not wanted. It would be the equivalent of somebody screaming in your ear basically, okay? And you feel your eardrum going like this and buzzing and so on. It would be the equivalent of doing that to the microphone, because mind you, these are very sensitive devices, as of course as are your eardrums. So don't let anybody scream in your eardrum and stuff. Now this is getting really long, me talking about microphones and condenser microphones dynamics and so on and specs, but I really wanted to do this video as a a newbie, an intro for somebody that really doesn't know anything about music tech. And now I'm going to grab my mic stand and check out whether these threads work or not. I do have another stand, but it's not in this house. And then I'm going to do another video where I'm going to connect this to my laptop. I'm going to try to make some basic recordings. So until it's time, ta!